Namaste, and first of all, I must say this is my aha moment, and literally I mean it. As I entered and felt the beautiful atmosphere, I was reminded of a couple of stories which I must share. And the first story was when Udhav, he is a friend of Krishna, and he tells him that why are you misleading the gop and gopis that just love and do bhakti and you will grow into this is not the way. You should teach them some method of meditation, and you are not telling them about Brahman and Parbrahman. So Krishna says you are a very qualified person for talking on these subjects. My way is very different, so you can go and give them a talk. So they go and he goes, but when he goes, he looks at the condition of the gop and gopis, he comes back humbled. So frankly, when I came here, my first impression was there is so much to learn, I have to learn. And I did learn, absorbing this atmosphere. And it also, this story reminded me of the first principle which all teachers must remember, that they are constant learners. A teacher who believes that he knows. There is a very beautiful line in the Isha Upanishad, Avijñātam Vijanata, Avijñātam Avijanata. He who knows it not. He who has not the thought of it knows it. So this was my feeling, that this place is growing beautifully through this constant learning from within. And the other story that I was reminded was in one of the Upanishads, where a young 5-year-old child goes to Rishi Gautam's ashrama, like a Gurukul. This is absolutely a Gurukul in the modern context. So he says, I want to have the highest knowledge. That was known as Brahma Gyan. So it was not like classroom system. You can't teach yoga, the true yoga, esoteric yoga, by any outer means. So the Guru tells him, you go to the forest, go with 100 cows, lean and thin, come back when they are 400 and healthy. So the Guru's wife tells him, what kind of a cruel man are you to ask them to do this? And he says, no, I know my job, and I'm sure he'll come back glorious and shining. And then in the forest, he nurtures the cows, and everything he learns, not just about the cows. He learns about the forest, he learns about nature, he learns about the spirits that move the beings. He learns from the fire, he learns from the well, he learns from the cow, he learns from the sky, and eventually he, through all these, going deeper and deeper, he discovers the Brahman which is inside him. And when he comes back, the story is a very touching end. So he goes to his Guru and says, now I have come back with 400 cows, you give me the Brahman knowledge. He says, you already know. Your radiant face is revealing that you already know. I don't have anything to teach you. And the disciple, no, yet I would like to hear from you. Because, these stories are such reminders of fundamental humility that all of us must cultivate. A child, from child to, grown-ups, we have this idea that I know. And today the world is suffering from this excessive idea of I know. I often use this limerick. My name is Benjamin Jovit. All that is knowledge, I know it. And all that I am a graduate from Balliol College. All that is knowledge, I know it. And all that I do not know is not knowledge. So this is a kind of arrogance, whereas true education humbles us. So what really is this education? Even before that, just a little experience I had a few days back. A lot of webinars nowadays and talks on because of the new education policy which they have tried to tune into the free progress system. They have sincerely tried within the limitations. So I was often saying that, just like healing should not be in a hospital. You should have a healing space. Hospital make you feel sick, if not nauseated. It should be a space where you go and you start feeling healed. So for school, I was suggesting that we should have spaces for education. So often people ask that, what do you mean by spaces for education? Spaces for education means the child feels like coming. Number one, he should be happy to go there. It should not be in the classroom format, boxes, one class to another. And the child should learn. There should be enough things around to make him feel the need to learn. As the mother says, to love to learn is the greatest gift we can give to the child. But the teachers should be there as facilitators. And as very beautifully, I like that word, co-learners. Because there is so much we learn. As I said, just walking into this premises, so much learning happened. Because learning is something which is happening all the time. So when I was saying all this, I had not seen actually any of the schools in Auroville. I come to Savitri Bhavan and go back most of the time. And of course, Bharat Nivas and these places. Now I can say that, well, because people ask, any such space example you can give. And I'm sure I'm going to speak about this. Irambika is one place where something like this has been attempted. This is the another. I'm sure there are other places like that. But this is the one which I have felt concretely, the aha experience. This is what learning is about. It's a discovery. So what really is education? It's admission that man can rise above his instincts. Otherwise, basic instincts are given to us, animals. So that instinct to preserve myself, to go through entire education system to create survival of the fittest is, meaningless, because, well, we are given is something like an animal. Each one is given what is needed to survive. So education is the recognition that no, we can rise above our animal instincts and change it, master it, conquer it. So this is one of the things about refining ourselves. We humanize. It's true that we have things which are in the animal nature, but as a human being, we humanize it. As Shubindu beautifully describes in Savitri, and love that was once an animal's wants, then a sweet madness in the rapturous heart, then a happy, ardent companionship, comradeship in the mind becomes a lonely, yearning space. So the heart that loved man loves God. So this is the evolution which takes place in human beings. Second, it's a recognition of the fact that we can consciously evolve. So education is a kind of yoga. Only we don't use the word yoga because, well, people are not supposed to be doing conscious yoga. And most of the writings of the mother, which now are published as on education. So the background was that Pranabda asked the mother, Mother, this is okay, you have spoken so much on different subjects. What about those who do not like to use the term yoga, or, they associate yoga with certain exercises, they don't want to use these terms. And yet, is there a way that they too can engage into it? So she said, yes, why not? Because truth is inside us. It doesn't matter what we call it. What is needed is a seeking. So all those series of essays were very interestingly on education, but meant for those who want to engage in yoga, but without using the word yoga. And you look at those essays, which includes overview of education, then physical, vital, mental. So when we look at the vital education, he speaks so much about refinement. I think that's something very much missing in most of the places. Because without refinement, we remain just what we are. Right now, education is a lot about the left brain. And I shared this joke, which is one of my favorite ones. Man has two sides of the brain, the left and the right. The left has nothing right in it, and the right has nothing left in it. So, pun is not intended, but it is so true. Completely left brain oriented. I still remember walking into my medical school with a dead body which you have to cut. There's no respect for it, dead is dead. The mother reminds us how foolish we are to treat the dead as dead. And then she says something very interesting, that I know of many who are dead and yet living. And there are many who are living and yet they are like dead. That's what the Upanishad also tells us. So it's about this discovery which goes on. That's how she says education begins even before, in fact, before conception, not even from conception. How does it begin? Because we all have a kind of image of an ideal. Anyone who can be worthy of being called a human being. Merely dropping off the horns and tail and nails doesn't make it a man. But humanity conceives an ideal which it wants to live. This ideal is of course an imperfect, as we discover, as we go into deeper and deeper into ourselves. But at least it holds an image of what is not and yet can be. That's what is an ideal. It is not yet, and yet something in us seeks it, aspires for it. And the next step is we want to bring that ideal down upon earth, manifest it through whatever means. And all education is essentially seeking for this something which is deeper, higher. Sri Aurobindo says so wonderfully, one of the Mahavakyas, which is so difficult for the average human intellect to understand, that nothing can be taught. So what is meant by nothing can be taught? This teaching, we have this idea of something being put from outside. But nothing can be taught means knowledge is inside. This is the most fundamental ancient truth that yoga anywhere in the world has taught. India has preserved this truth, that the source is within us. It's not somewhere outside. What is this source? It's the source of wisdom, of knowledge, even detailed knowledge. Knowledge is not just essential knowledge, but detailed knowledge. After all, people who discovered, how did they discover? They discovered it. Who was there to teach the first man how to make fire? And he had a great need that there should be something somewhere, and well, there is an answer to that need, and he probably played with, not with atoms, but with stones, and there was fire. So this need opens a door to knowledge. That is the aha experience. Archimedes, we know, and so many other stories, that there is a discovery. And this need should be there in a human being. Unfortunately, today we have too many answers, so there are no questions left. And I think a life without questions and where somebody has all the answers is as good as stopped progressing. To awaken the need to know, to learn. And when we have the need to know, what does the teacher do? He simply points out a gesture here, a gesture there. How did the ancient yogis teach? Even when you go to the mother, when children had problems, or teacher had problems rather, and they went to the mother. So the teacher would say, this child is I can't manage my class, I can't control my class. Then mother would often tell the teacher, because you don't know how to control yourself. Now this sounds very paradoxical, because only that which we have discovered and achieved within can be transmitted to someone else. If I don't know how to control myself, how am I going to even talk about controlling someone else? Then she would call the child, and she would ask the child. This is a direct, real experience of a child who is now grown up. And she was telling me that when she was 15 and so many complaints, and then the child went to mother, and mother says, I'm hearing a lot of things about you. Yes, mother, so you tell me. You consult your heart and tell me. Do you think what you are doing is the right thing? And the child stayed quiet for a moment and said, yes, mother. And the mother said, okay, good, nothing else. This was something amazing. It was like a discovery for the child that I need to consult my own heart. You see, we have stopped consulting. That's what I meant by the left and the right. We become very brain-oriented. So brain's method of knowledge, it takes things, divides, cuts, zooms in, zooms out, again picks up another thing. This is one kind of, I wouldn't use the word knowledge, but gathering of bits and pieces of information, which is okay, nothing wrong. We have to use every faculty. But there is something else which gives us a whole picture. So people often ask, there is so much division, disunity, how to create unity. Mother gave a very simple answer by discovering the origin. In the origin, we are all one. And where is the origin within us? In the heart. Whoever lives deep inside knows there can be no division. This is a space of the Creator. And all knowledge is there. Not only all knowledge, all love is there. See, we grow up. So many confusions take place in life, human relationships especially. Why? Because we have not discovered that love is inside me. I don't need to beg somebody, please give me some love. Do you have a little to spare? So he will spare probably, but ask you a lot more in return. But when this door of love opens, there is nothing to ask, you only give. Similarly, all joy is inside. See, so many problems of drugs and everything. Why? Because we can't connect with this joy inside. So what do? We take to drugs. We go partying. We think by these means, I will have joy inside. But we are being hooked more and more, enslaved. Pornography, this is one of the... Why? Because we have not discovered this door of love and joy inside. If we discover this door, problems will be solved. Any government ways, now people are trying both kinds of things and both are going to fail. One is they try to regulate strictly outwardly. Other is they are legalizing it. Everything is okay. Both are dangerous. It's just a question of time. But to discover what is it that these children are seeking as they start growing into adolescence. They are looking for these very things which they are carrying inside. And if the teacher can show them this, task of the teacher is to show. How does the teacher do? He doesn't give ready-made answers, but he asks from the children. What do you feel? I can share one example from one of my interactions with children, small children. Rather two examples, plenty of them, but two. So one of them was that I asked the children that what did you have for today? Idli. So they all say idli. Some of the child say, okay, what is it made up of? Rice. Where does rice come from? From the fields. And how does it grow in the field? So the child, suddenly, one of the child say, oh, everything is there in everything. See, Brahmeva, Brahmarpano, all this truth he knows. Because in a grain of rice, in the Gita, in the Mahabharata, we have this story where Shri Krishna says in a grain of rice. So in a grain of rice, you have the sun, you have the water, you have the earth, you have, it needs space to grow, it needs air, it needs love of the person who has cared for it. It has every element, the seasons, everything is there in a grain of rice. So the child says, oh, there is everything in everything. I said, now you know, you can teach me. You have got the fundamental truth. And the other one which was so interesting, it was in a small village school in Odisha. We have this idea that by intellectualizing, getting degrees, we know so much. This illusion is now breaking down because at the end of all this knowledge, we are playing with atoms to blow out the world. So these children were all seated and one of the child asked me, all 8th standard must be 12, 13. Alokda, what language does mother understand? So I asked, you people tell me, you have any idea? So one of them told me, Odia. I said, okay, why do you say so? Every time I pray to her in Odia, I get a response. So I said, very good. I asked somebody else. And the other person derived an inferential understanding. Actually, I'm sure she understands every language. Because I have heard whatever language you pray in, the divine response. Now you see, through that, to understand what is the purpose of language. See, we teach them language, we teach them grammar. But what is it meant to communicate? Language is a medium. It is meant to communicate something deep within me. I can use this medium for good. Speech, which is supposed to be the most developed faculty, walk. It's supposed to carry the vibrations of truth, light. See, the truth, light, the nad which has gone in creation is recovered in human speech. It has that power, that potential. Human speech is creative, unfortunately also destructive. And how little we know how to use our speech. I may be an erudite scholar, I may quote 100 journals, but at the end of the day, this faculty of speech, which we train and develops, which of course is there given to man, how is it used to create destruction? And the mother goes on to say, when we misuse this instrument, especially by using abusive language, it is like committing spiritual suicide. Gossiping about others in very slandering terms. He says it's all like committing spiritual suicide. Now just imagine, this faculty can build. It has that, and she says human speech is so powerful. What is a mantra? Mantra is developing the human speech to its most intense and highest creative level. That's what mantra is about. Anyone can, by training himself, develop to a point where his speech becomes a mantra. Mantra is not just something written in a book which we pick up. A very nice couplet by Kabir. He says, "Jo bolूं," I'll say in Hindi, translated. "Jo bolूं so ved kahawa, jahan pag dharun so tirath." Whatever I speak is a Veda. Wherever I step, put my feet is a tirth, is a holy pilgrimage. Why? Because it's a state of consciousness. Now, this is another thing which should be there as part of education, how to shift consciousness. It's something which is just not taught. As a psychiatrist, I meet people who are suffering, who are depressed, they don't know what to do. Of course, there are complicated processes of psychoanalyzing the animal things which are inside and releasing. But if they just know how to shift the consciousness, doesn't it happen even spontaneously? And I don't know whether this place is open to public or not, but at least for Auroville, this is a wonderful place to be if one is depressed. I mean, it's so healing, it's so therapeutic. Why? Simply because when we go here, the plants speak. We don't know their language. That's a different thing altogether. Flowers speak. This one thing which which the mother teaches us. Even objects speak. They speak. You can. Shubindu says that if you touch an object, you can know who has used it. A yogi can know, touching a sword, that 300 years back, what was it used for? And this truth was known. We have lost all this because we see only the apparent surfaces. So knowledge also teaches us, education teaches us to go deeper and deeper. It's about discovering. And by discovering the world, we discover ourselves. Why is the plant, the tree the way they are? And if we talk to the tree, please don't talk loudly. They'll send you to a psychiatrist. And talk to the tree, talk to creation. It's so wonderful. People feel alone. I have never understood why people feel alone. There is so much to talk to. You can talk to a little mud. We have so many beautiful objects. They speak to us. They seek our attention, When we grow in consciousness, we can see, oh, these objects are wanting some kind of appreciation. And when we just stand there and say, this is so beautiful. The hands that made you. It's something so beautiful. You can pick up a mud of clay. That's the ancient Indian teaching of Sanatana Dharma. And with the mud of clay, you can fill it with all that is God, all that is Brahman. You can manifest in a mud of clay. That's the idea of worshipping. Even a clay, that's how Sri Aurobindo says, O worshipper of the formless, infinite, reject not form. What dwells in form is He. To bring out that He or she or it or that or your own self, doesn't matter, higher self, is the whole art of education. And therefore, this education also becomes an empowerment. Why? Because without knowledge, all our responses, reactions are chaotic. They bring chaos in the world. But with knowledge, knowledge is not just that I know it, now I will act according to my wish. True knowledge is also something which shows us the thing to be done. It's a package. And for this, we don't need to consult a moral science book. Discernment, because it's not about right and wrong on one side and the other side. Life offers complex situations. And we grow through that. The decision has to be taken. So children should be taught how to decide by looking inside, discerning. And there are two ways of discerning. One deep inside the heart, which doesn't lie, not the surface heart, but deep inside. They should be taught this. There's something missing in education, unfortunately. People talk about psychic education, but that too through a notebook. Psychic education, first thing is to teach, to learn, to go deep inside the heart, behind the surface emotion. See what you feel. The heart, it never lies. And the other is using the discerning intellect. In the absence of that, which is buddhi. To bring out the buddhi out of this clay mud thinking creature is a very important task of education, because once the buddhi is out, it is like the guide. And how does buddhi operate? It tells you the long term consequences which are going to come. Desires tell us the short-term gains, which may be followed by one, happiness, and two, sorrows free. That's the old marketing strategy of nature. It shows us the immediate, buy this, immediate pleasure. But there are two, sometimes five sorrows, which is a grace. Honestly, all our values are topsy-turvy because at least we realize this is imperfect. Otherwise, we would be stuck forever in our imperfection, immortalizing our ignorance. So this is the whole task. Then this is very interesting, these two terms which form the basis of, one of the questions was consciousness. So there are two terms used in Indian thought, ignorance and knowledge. Avidya and Vidya. And often schools are called as Vidyalaya. But Vidya is not about learning and getting marks, and Vidya, these are two modes of operation of one consciousness. And their origin is very interesting. If I may just, I'll take a couple of minutes. So when the one consciousness, which is all-knowing, omniscient, omnipotent, plunges towards the inconscient, it has to narrow down. It is entering into a narrow passage where for a moment, at the end of it, it forgets itself, lapses. Like we are traveling to some place, or I was coming from the ashram to Aha. Now I don't know where is Aha. Ashram is behind. I'm looking at the traffic. I'm looking at the hoardings and posters. I have forgotten that I have come from there and I am going to Aha, and that is avidya. I'm just looking at this small little piece. But Vidya is where all this oneness is behind. It's always there. Vidya is about oneness. Knowledge based on oneness. This oneness is not about blurring of distinctions. Oneness is not uniformity. It is to see the one consciousness at play in many ways, in many forms. This is very, very empowering and enriching. It's only when we discovered behind all the different objects that there are atoms and electrons and protons, common base. See? Even at the most material level, when we discover the oneness, it empowers us. So this oneness is not about sameness. Oneness is not sameness. Sameness doesn't exist in outer world. In outer world, you can't have, you can't say that the mango tree and the imli tree and tamarind tree, they are all same. That is absurdity. But yes, there is the tree. So everywhere we'll see this oneness, but it is behind. So what science is doing is it is teaching us science of appearances, which is avidya. It must take us deeper into that oneness. So consciousness has two modes of operation. In its lapse, when it starts recovering, it is on the basis of avidya. It doesn't know. We are all like that when we don't know where we have come from, where we are going. That story which changed the great poet Eliot's life, that it was raining and he looked for a shelter and he went inside a house, knocking the door. And that house, somebody opened and asked him, "Who are you? Where are you coming from? Where are you going?" He gave the standard answer. But that whole night he kept wondering, is this the right answer? Who am I? Children don't know this. Where am I coming from? We strengthen false identities. Where am I going? Oh, I'm going to get a good job, career, option, earn a lot of money. So, right from childhood, we are actually creating more obstacles. Children naturally have that inner knowledge, very naturally. And then each child, there is a beautiful story inside each one of us, which children have to discover and write. Life is writing a storybook. And often this little exercise I've given to children, 2-3 exercises, I'm sure you all know and must be doing it. You write a story about your own, what you want your life to be. So, Mother speaks about it. She says they must be asked to write a story which is happy from beginning to end. That's how our imagination should operate. Rather than distorting it, no, there can be no light without shadows. Suffering and pain are essential. Maybe, but no more. We don't want enough of it. So write a beautiful story which is beautiful from the beginning till the end. So this way children's creative imagination, they learn that life is a story and I am a part author in it. Of course, ultimate author is there, but he keeps correcting it, course correction. But we are part authors. So by doing this, children begin to learn how to lead their life. So this is one of the exercises. Second one, what is the most important thing for someone? So I asked this, that supposing you had your bucket list of 10 things. I don't like the word bucket list. Kicking the bucket and death wish and ice bucket challenge, weird things. Bucket list, what is it that we want? So 10 things they will say. Then say, okay, supposing out of these 3, now you have to make a choice. See, many times we are trying to do too many things and wanting too many things, and there is no sense of priority. 3, then 1, and then, okay, you have 1 day and 1 choice alone you can ask. Then you ask that which is, I have had marvelous replies from children. Children who spoke about different things in the 10 list took none of them when it was told, okay, you have 1 day and 1 choice. And I have heard children say, I would like to find God and surrender completely to the divine. Because that's the most sensible thing to do. Imagine that one thing which is the most sensible thing we don't do, we are waiting for the last moment. So these are the ways by which the inner knowledge comes out. And this knowledge can apply onto practically everything. That's how, people grow organically until books came in and corrupted our natural knowing, and then they taught us how to manipulate things. See, I have grown up in a village and I am aware that, farmers knew many things very spontaneously. And much later when you look at it, even fruits from the education of life came from fruits that don't, you must eat the fruit in the right season. So don't try to convert people to a teaching for which they are not ready. The egg must ripe before you hatch it. It will take time. You can't hatch it prematurely. So many things just from nature. This is the teaching that, Satyakam learnt by being in the forest, rearing cows, tending to cows, he learnt. So everything is interconnected. This is the other part which, I feel so important, because consciousness is one. There is interconnectedness in this whole creation. We have grown up with this strange idea that if I am thinking something, nobody knows about it. You don't need to whisper for someone to know it. There are agencies which will spread it around, and there will be distortion to that, and more distortions, because this world is teeming with forces, and that is something we all have to learn, this play of forces in which our lives are caught, as Sri Aurobindo says, in an ambiguous net. And this knowledge, which at one point of time was so alive and vibrant, has been completely lost, because we only know appearances. We think, oh, it's my thinking. So we have learned to deceive. I can put up a nice, neat appearance, smile. Children have, unfortunately, they have learned. They start doing things which will earn points from the teacher. And teachers are very happy. Why? Because they are very well behaved children. But these are the children who may grow up and deceive. They are no more themselves. It's good to have good behavior, without a doubt. But a behavior which is good only to please the teacher is so dangerous. When we are growing up sometime, because in our family, if you talk about smoking cigarette, means you are on the path of perdition or not already. So I have seen, grown-ups, when they are smoking and the parents came, they learn to put the cigarette behind. This is what they learn, because they are no more that straightforwardness, frankness, truthfulness, qualities which are so fundamental to life. So this education is not just about bringing out mental faculties, it's about refining the vital. It's about ensuring that fear doesn't enter into your communication, either with the teacher or with God and this world. It is delight which is at the root of it, not fear. And if fear comes in, as it comes, it's a movement of ignorance. How to deal with it? How to make them free of fear? I think if they can just discover this challenge of corona, how I can bring out from within me possibilities which are yet asleep of dealing with the problem from within. Everything is a challenge. Difficulty is a challenge to bring out my best. So all these and a lot more. Let me just close before have some questions, because I can. It's such a wonderful place. You just feel so much inspired. So thank you for this place. And last is, what is we often hear about psychic and spiritual education. Basically, what is psychic education? All of us are containing the source within us. We don't have to use the word psychic. The divine is within us. Where is he? Ask anyone, where is your self? Don't give any answer. Nobody will say here. If you do it here, then it's like you're not happy with life. Nobody will say it's here. Spontaneously our hands go here, very spontaneously. That's why in Indian custom we have this namaste, and in ashram we have modified it by saying here. Heartily. This is the place where the source is. And we have to unveil. And it can be unveiled through everything. It's not just going within in this world. So this, if we can make them become aware that there is something so much more which they need to discover, and that is within them. And then she says, this something within is in everything. It is independent of the place of your birth, country of origin, the language you speak, the custom, the tradition, independent of everything. See, when people connect from the heart, they feel that spontaneous sense of being one. It's the mind that brings the differentiation. Mind can never bring unity. All methods people may try with the mind. It is not going to bring unity. There cannot be a consensus at the mental level. You have to just watch these TV debates and inter-religious faith dialogues, sorry to say, because they are all mental things. But consult the heart. Heart doesn't ask, what's your caste? What's your religion? It loves. It's like a bridge which is thrown across. So this is where the psychic is there. And if children can understand that there is something like a pearl, it can be done through stories. Stories were so beautiful. Arabian Nights, many of them. Indian mythology is so wonderful to discover this which is lying inside us. And through stories, it triggers the imaginative mind of children. Unfortunately, again, one of the problem of a completely rational, analytical oriented education, that it has labeled profound truths contained in stories as myths. But there are many layered truths which are communicated in a way. After all, we all communicate things through stories. So these stories, and we can write new stories. It's not that we should be careful about choosing them. Don't teach them that Aesop fables, slow and steady wins the race. It doesn't happen really. I mean, they are not supposed to run on the same road. Rabbit has its own place to run, and the tortoise has its own place. In their own space, they are king. Put them out of place. Don't make them run. It's not a race. So these are the stories through which children will understand that there is something so deep. All my understanding of all this soul, spiritual life, all this came through stories. Later on, they opened a door. Later on I saw, oh, this is so wonderful, mother is saying like this. The story of Prahlad, when I read, I understood, oh, so there are two operating systems in us. One is Prahlad, who says, Hari, Hari, Hari everywhere. So he sees oneness. He represents the soul. I didn't use the word soul. There is something in us which cannot be destroyed, cannot be killed, cannot be. burnt by fire. That's what happens to Prahlad. You send him snake, it changes into flowers. That is a psychic being. And the other operating system is Hiranyakashyap. I am king, I am greater than God. I am going to do what God has left incomplete. Arrogantly, that's where we see in Savitri triple soul forces. Now, as a child, it was so spontaneous that look here, there is in us this Prahlad. Whom do I identify myself with? And I keep telling schools, you people are still teaching the gospel of Hiranyakashyap. Then there is another story, the dwarf with triple stride. So this story taught me that, you have to be really humble. It's only the humble who can conquer. The arrogant person doesn't. He is likely to lose. That story taught many things. Sagar Manthan, I'll just share one small example, then I'll stop. So I used to tell one story to my child who studied in ashram school. Whenever I would visit, I was in Bangalore and they were here. So whenever I would come, he'll say stories. So one of his favorite story was Sagar Manthan. Sagar Manthan, I think, anyways, we can check it out. It's the story of the great churning. So one day, this 5-6-year-old boy was playing with his toys and his granny is there and she's talking about saris, their colors and cost. Suddenly he turns around and says, Nani, you want Mohini or Amrit? She didn't get the context. He got it in that story. That my ultimate choice will be either all that allures me or the nectar of immortality. Sri Aurobindo says that in Law of the Way. That the way is hard. Why? Because nay, is the cup of immortality meant for a weakling to be given without a prize? Now you see, these stories teach us so much about life, about our own self, and we must have stories. And lastly, they should become conscious. I think a lot of problem of this world is simply because of lack of consciousness. I don't want to use the word unconsciousness because in psychiatry and neurology they mean something else. But lack of consciousness, dealing with material object, dealing with people, so unconscious. People I have seen keeping, glass of water over a book of Mother Sri Aurobindo or over a book, and I would feel so jarring below the tabletop glass, Mother's picture, all put this way, that way, chaotically. So once I couldn't help it and I said, look here, man, you are inviting chaos in your life. He said, why? What do you mean? I said, you are dealing chaotically. You are turning the supreme harmony into chaos. So that form will appear. So then he understood. It's not about the sense of the sacred, of the right placement of things. And I have seen all kinds of things. Why? Because again, this kind of education, all is one. You take out the shoes and put them on the bed sheet, bed. I have seen this. I won't say where. Great sight. Now these simple things, like everything has its place. There is a way to do everything. It's called in Indian thought Rit Chit. Rit comes from the word rhythm. There is a rhythm, there is a way, there is a method. Mahasaraswati is perfection. Everything has its own beautiful place. Find the place, create a place. And that makes life so harmonious, so organized, so beautiful. Not organized by a kind of mental formula, but spontaneously. We don't keep shoes on top and books below. Instinctively, even the human body is built like that. Books are here. The sacred things are here. The most beautiful space. Things of food and dress and all this is here. This is where we cover up all our shame and guilt and food, belly. And the shoes are there. The human body is built like the Panch Tattvas. Talking about it. See, this is space. Then you have the aerial tattva, you have the lungs, you have the speech, expressive speech, the vital. And then you have fire at the center, right extending up to here. Then all the waters, everything you will find accumulated here. That's why it's the seat of so many diseases. And then the Muladhara. All the 5 elements are represented within the human body, but always we should teach them there's something which the 5 elements cannot capture. At the end of the day, they must know there is something which is yet beyond. The sense of the beyond. There is something which remains yet unknown and unknowable. The story of the Kena Upanishad, where all the elements come together, but they cannot know the one. Beautiful story. So these are some of my thoughts which I just feel like sharing in this aha place, I must say. I'm going to talk about it to several people because it's a wonderful experience. But if there are any questions, I would be very happy. Yes, please. Please, go ahead. Yes.
Maybe not so pleasant. And you were talking about stories and writing stories, and especially children's stories for small children, and the goodness of the world, and aspiring to something. Yes, there are those other things, but to highlight or focus
Yes.
what we aspire to. And so how do these things?
Yes, very beautiful. So, see, that's where we have to understand that nature has not exhausted all possibilities within itself, even leaving aside evolution, leaving aside supernature. And if we just look at this world, what is the most happening thing? Change. Okay. Look at the large spaces, this change from matter to man was there, say, 1 lakh years before. Anything called human, it was not there. Was there, what was this world when the asteroid impacted and destroyed 90% of life? So first thing we must understand, what is there in nature is not the ultimate possibilities of nature. Nature is like a magic box, if you want to put it, and there are many, many things inside it. And second thing, nature is not just material nature. Nature is also human nature. That of course is understood. Nature is everywhere and in everything, but has the last word in the story of creation. Creation itself is a story. The only thing is now we have become part authors. So first thing that we must understand is nature has a lot more to give. This even without reading Sri Aurobindo, at least to me very logically, when I was 15, 16, I had understood evolution will carry on, and unwittingly used the word Superman because it seemed absurd that with man, God's creativity is exhausted. Either there is no God or there is more to come. I mean, we know ourselves, don't we? I mean, we may think very highly about ourselves. But to imagine that such a weak, imperfect creature, okay, good creature, but still very imperfect creature, who knows nothing beyond the tip of his nose. What is going to happen the next moment cannot be the last word of the creative's consciousness which is within creation. This one. Second, nature is conscious. In front it may look unconscious. Look at an atom. You know, when you read that you have to have 2 electrons or 8 in the outermost orbit to create stability. So I was taken by surprise. How does the atom know it? But there is in the atom a process. There is a kind of knowledge, consciousness which is hidden in everything. The life of plant, the way they operate. Outwardly it may look it's all mechanical. How do they seek light? I mean, I have a tree right outside my Desiree home. That tree reminds me how we can tackle with the most impossible situations. It's a big tree. So probably some obstacle came in the path of its light. Trees instinctively turn towards light. So there is a big trunk which has come out and then it has turned up. So every day I say, oh wow. Doesn't matter what is the degree of challenge, there is a way out. So nature is only a unconscious front, but behind is all the consciousness. This is the second thing we need to understand. And the third, because nature is constantly revealing new things, I need to understand, am I meant to be just simply following the ways of nature? This is one part. Like a bond slave, it applies to human nature also. I have certain natural instinct. Now natural instinct is, well, if somebody abuses me, I get angry. That's a natural instinct. You can't say you are being wrong. But is that my ultimate possibility, or there is something else within me which can become master of nature? So there are three stages of schooling which Shobindu speaks of everywhere in Savitri and elsewhere. One is where we are submerged like slaves of nature. And plant life, animal life is like that, life driven by instinct. So that's called asanna mrityu. It's like we are not conscious of what's happening, yet behind the movement of the deer and the tiger that leaps, you can see that there is a consciousness. Automatically it operates instinctively. Instinct is intuition operating within the limits of the species. The next step is you become a student of nature. That's what is the next step. That's what makes us human. If we are driven by nature, then we are just like animals moved by instincts. So we become students of nature, the witness, the sakshi. We discover new secrets, and then we become masters of nature. Ish, Anumanta, he who sanctions, this I shall do and this I won't do. This movement I will allow, this movement I will not allow. So these are the three aspects with regard to our relation with nature. And we need to discover all of them. First one we don't need to discover. So these stories are telling us about the possibilities. And if we understand them as possibility, they are so wonderful. I'll give an example of a story which seems impossible. So there is a story of Raja Harishchandra. Now this noble king belonging to the Suryavanshis, Lord Rama's ancestors, he has taken a vow, I'll always speak the truth. Now what are the layers of truth? Suddenly in a dream he sees a rishi come and asks for his kingdom, and he gives the kingdom. It's a dream. Next day the rishi comes. The king doesn't say that where is the legal note, show me that. He doesn't say, oh, it's a dream. For him, even in a dream, what he has committed has its own truth. He gives the kingdom and walks away. He goes through ultimate sacrifices. So when I read truth is a hard and strenuous conquest from the mother, I understood, because that story was so evident. Anything whose principle we want to discover, love, we can't be satisfied with just the outer layer, oh, love is all about WhatsApp messaging. No, it's not even about marriage, it's not about romance, it goes much deeper. Love is the flame of sacrifice. Then you discover its origin is in the divine. So this thing is given to human beings to consciously evolve. And there are tendencies, raw material is given to us. And shaping this raw material into its divine possibility is what education and yoga is about. Since we are talking about love, somebody asked the mother, what should we do when love comes to us as human beings? Aren't we supposed to reject all love for the sake of the divine? She says, it's better you go through it. And if you learn to love even one person in a true way, without expectations, and then she says, you will touch the core of divine love within you and within creation. And she says the other way of shutting your door to love, you may lose that possibility, who knows, for centuries. Because you have shut the doors. So you see, we are given raw material, that's what nature gives. Now animals live with the raw material, so they eat raw food. I mean, this just to say. But we are given the fire to cook that raw material. That fire inside is the fire of aspiration. I want my crude things to become more refined. So I have to cook it. That fire is inside. So when I cook it, that same tendency, which is animal, becomes human, and that human becomes godlike. The godlike becomes divine eventually. So this both things are there. One is nature, and the other is beyond nature, which if you read Lyle Watson's book, same thing he speaks about supernature. The Divine Mother, of course, speaks about the Divine Shakti, which is the origin of nature. That's what makes us, I believe, truly human. That we are not satisfied just by being what we are, but going beyond, transcending ourselves is what characterizes as the ultimate human possibility. Yeah. Anything? Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Hello? Okay. So the question was that as children are growing up, there seem to be two options. One is to give them a framework to understand the world, which enables them towards their higher possibility, and the other is to instill that sense of questioning in them. To always be looking and wondering and trying to understand the deeper meaning. And it seems that you cannot do both at the same time to me. So, what would you say for that?
So, giving a framework vis-a-vis letting them explore freely, let me put it like that. So, let me put it in a slightly paradoxical way. See, the age of institutions is over, let me tell you, because institutions are very heavily loaded with mental framework. Having said that, the mother spoke about the future, and this is where I feel it should be. She says the framework, some framework is required in the beginning. It should be very wide and plastic. Some framework is required, but framework need not be crammed up class. Framework should be very wide, like nature walk and being around. But they can be, honestly speaking, even in the wild, those who are ready for learning can learn. But well, then it's a different process altogether. I mean, people in villages learned even without going to school. That's a different story altogether, because whatever life gives them becomes an opportunity to learn. It's something inbuilt within human beings. How did the first human learn before school? But we don't need to go back to that. We can give a kind of framework, be a little more conscious. So there are things here and there, like this wonderful example. You have that tire which has made a steps. So children, children learn that we can use these things in a way which is very different. They learn about creativity. I think creativity is something so important. So some framework should be there. For example, when children are exploring, if there are wild or poisonous snakes, you have to be careful. You can't just leave them in the wild and say it's okay. So one has to be, but at the same time, children should learn how to deal with these challenges. So framework should be there, but it should be very wide, supple plastic. That's why no exams, for example. But there can be some kind of a rating. Why this rating is important? Because children, if you give them nothing, nowadays, I don't know how it is in Auroville, but they fall back to simply WhatsApp education, which is no education. Now that is dangerous. So till they develop, in ashram there were competitions for which prizes were given. People asked the mother. She said, children are living in the vital. You can't just let them so vital first needs some kind of framework. And then they must understand, however, that learning goes beyond the classroom. That's what universal education, which nowadays people speak about. And also the teacher teaching himself is taught. All these sutras come from there. To love to learn, to be a seeker. All these are important. But initially you start with them, with a framework, then you take out. It's like when we go through education anyways, at the end there are no frameworks, you have real life, which is very different. All my medical education, doing my MBBS and MD, didn't teach me what my first patient taught me, honestly speaking. Because it was all checklist, boxes. And the first patient I started using the checklist. It didn't fit into any of these. Nobody taught me patience is required. When a patient came and asked me, Dr. Saab, this medicine I have to take with before food or after food. I said, okay, after food. Then comes back with water or milk. True story I am telling you. Night 12 o'clock, I have slept off my duty and knocks, knock, knock. So okay, you take it with water. Comes back, but I take milk at that time. Okay, you take with milk, it's okay. Then comes, sir, with warm milk or normal milk. Now that time my whole thing was, I was too sleepy. And first time I realized I'm not supposed to lose my cool when there is a poor fellow doesn't know. He's asking, he's genuine about it. You can't. So from that time I made it a rule that there are no foolish questions, there are only foolish answers. so, so it's an education. I learned a quality of a doctor, which I didn't have. My education system didn't teach me. And you can use that learning to earn money. During COVID, people made 3-star hospitals. So, Shubindu says so beautifully, what is education? To educe, to bring out that which is the best in you. And then he says further, and to put it to a noble use. So, bringing out the best is not enough. I may have all the capacities. What do I use it for? I may use all my intelligence for crookedness. So, that is half education. So, both things should go together. Some framework, it's like freedom. As children, we grow up with some very nice concept. Till 5, you have the parent-child relationship. From 5 to 15, you are a friend. You can't say you are left in the wild. Your friend. Of course, nature will help you grow, like Shakuntala and all these examples. But then, you are like a friend. Father discusses with them, parents. And from 15, they are free, but you are keeping, like how the divine does. He gives us freedom, but not quite so. He is keeping a watch. And if the sheep goes very far, he knows how to call it back. So that is how it should be. And empowerment means that they learn how to make their choices. I think this is so important. When they learn how to make choices, then they are free. Second, the consequence of choices, as it would be in real life. We give them weird consequences. Of course, here I'm sure they don't do, but some consequences come in life. For example, a child who is constantly hitting others. If in real life, you will become isolated or you'll become a gangster. You have only 2 choices in life. You can't have a third choice. So, choices which should follow very natural consequences of your actions, not arbitrary. So, all this requires dealing with children. They have to grow in consciousness, and otherwise there would be no need of parents and teachers itself ultimately. So, framework is required, but it should be very supple, very wide. If a child wants to just sit for a day, it doesn't feel like. So, no, you have to be inside the class. But at the same time, if he makes it a habit, so see, that suppleness is required. Oh, this is very cool. I can go in the school and just go to sleep. I'll keep awake till 12 o'clock midnight because I have a nice cozy place. Teachers don't tell me anything. That is also not good. Because we are teaching the child to, to tell lies. We are teaching him to manipulate. So manipulative behavior. So all this have to be taken into account. It's a whole psychological world. That's why the mother said a teacher has to be a psychologist and a yogi. But a psychologist has nothing to do with BA and MA in psychology. That is not psychology at all. I have learned as a psychiatrist lot more psychology from the Mahabharata than I have with all those. I have read those psychology books and I had to literally tell my students of psychiatry and psychology, throw those books out of the window. Or you read them only for your exams, because unfortunately. So this is how it should be, both. But not very narrow and restricting frame, certainly.
Alok, everybody likes appreciation, and your appreciations are very genuine, and you appreciated this school. And I would ask, you see, when mother was asked to name a school, she named the first school in Auroville as the last school. Then after naming so many schools, after school, super school, things,
Future school.
future school she didn't name.
And there is another somewhere else.
We have named it, but it is not in mother's, as far as I know.
Yeah, it's
But
not in her.
the
Yes.
last school she named as the no school. So when she says these are very symbolic, and
Yes.
that meant for us. And from last school to no school, there is a journey, and maybe we are somewhere in between, and this school is here, and there are other schools. But would you like to emphasize,
Yes,
elaborate on no school? Where
absolutely.
you
So, see, these terms have a certain connotation. So, what really is school? The word itself communicates. School is somewhere where from outside you are schooling. You are forming something from outside. And that's what a school is. The child goes there and comes out as a finished product. That's why you had that famous, what was that? We want no education. I forget the name of it. Huh? Yeah, Pink Floyd. That's right. We want no education. So this idea of sending children to a space from there where they come out as finished product, this is what schools were doing. So no schooling like that, but exploring, discovering. That's why the paradox would be otherwise. Even in ashram, she spoke of the school as one day, she says 50 years later, it will become the seat of highest knowledge. So by no school, she did not mean that children should be grow in the wild. What she meant was the typical mental framework that should go away. For instance, when she spoke of no religion. Now this no religion means there is an approach to God as somebody who is outside us and whom you worship and pray and supplicate. But religion in the sense that there is the sense of the sacred and the divine presence within and in everything, that is not something which she is. So she is speaking specific terms in a certain ways. So religion has dogmas, narrowness, creeds, cults, where everybody must conform to a belief system. But that doesn't mean again human beings are left in the wild. They can be, well, there's a choice given to everybody. But if we speak about evolution, there has to be a process where we can participate. So in that process, we don't need to use the word school. So the best word I believe still is Guru Kul. Not because of Guru Kul in that way that we have this idea. Unfortunately, films has completely distorted Guru Kul. What does Guru Kul means? Guru Kul. It is the family of the Guru. So, meaning thereby, if a child comes to, let's say, Aha, this is a Gurukul, and the entire space where he goes, this is developed, this whole space is developed around the truth revealed by Mother and Sri Aurobindo. That's what this whole thing becomes. So in the ashram also, children don't just go to school, they see the samadhi, they interact with everyone. So this is the whole concept. So it should be like a Gurukul. We don't need to use any word. We have to use some word. Maybe for this place, Aha is good enough. Let people understand whether it's a school. I mean, to me, it meant like an aha experience. But yes, if you start doing a traditional schooling where people are put with the blackboard and chalk, first thing that I heard, which made me so happy, that there are no blackboards and no white chalks. Racism is out. Okay, so no black and white, because life is so much about grey. So anyways, that's a different story altogether. So, but there should be spaces. As I said, there should be spaces where they can learn and grow, and there should be teachers who are ready to facilitate that process. That's how Kathopanishad says. Wherever there is a seeker like Nachiketa, and wherever there is a teacher like Yama, there is something beautiful is created, and the mother confirms this in one of her writings. Wherever there is a seeker and a teacher who can facilitate. So teachers are not teachers with B.Ed, M.Ed degree, but facilitators. Somebody has to facilitate that learning. That's all. It should be a space. Call it by whatever name, that's each one's creativity. So yes, no school, but she didn't say education and education spaces should not be there. It's like she didn't want hospitals. But then people fall sick. So what do they do? So we should have healing spaces. So this idea of spaces dedicated to a certain kind of activities there in Indian culture and should be respected. It is Rith, part of Rith, that while everything is everywhere, you can stand by a stone and pray. As long as you don't turn that area with a mazar and say, now this is only my place. You can stand before a tree and pray. Nobody denies that. But there are spaces which are like concentrated spots which facilitate the learning. That's what playing space and time is about. We have to respect the rhythms of time, and we have to respect the concentration of certain energies at places. That's how it should be. Not school as subtly, it's horrifying. One of the things that I dread, I love to come again and again to serve the mother, lives after lives. But this idea of going to school with a bag is horrifying. So this is a good place to come. So maybe much better. See, these are steps. Mankind will go through many sub stages to discover that ultimate possibility. Institutions will go away. It's already happening. Why only school? Age of institutions is over. And human beings are, like currency. It's becoming defunct more and more. So all this will happen automatically. Okay. So I think we will. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed being together.
Thank you for coming.
No, it's a joy to be here. I am taking a lot of things myself, a lot of learning, a lot of wonderful things. Thank you.